Shalom, friends. Rob Van Hoff with TelosTorah and Rob on the Rock here. I just recorded a short video going over the very first word of our Torah portion this week, Vayyishlach, getting into some of the geeky details between the ancient Hebrew and the ancient Greek translation. What I want to do in this video is go in a little more detail in some of the Hebrew. We're not going to look at any Greek here. 32, 10 through 13, which is the core of Jacob's prayer when he learns that Esau is coming his way. And this is a terrifying moment for him. He's coming back to the promised land as God had told him to go, to return from after 20 years with Laban. Now, of course, he's got women and children with him in his camp. And he calls it Machanaim, right? Machanaim, which means two camps. And he even divides out the camps as you read because he is concerned about Esau. But even though it's been 20 years, the last he knows is that Esau is fuming mad and has sworn to kill him. Esau has sworn to kill Jacob. And so we're going to read this prayer. And I have the NASB on the right and the Hebrew on the left. But we'll go through and we'll talk about some of the features of the Hebrew as we go. So just a reminder that Vayyishlach is a Torah portion that extends from chapters 32 through chapters 36 of the book of Genesis. So here we go. Vayomer Yaakov Elohei Avi Avraham Velohei Avi Yitzchak Adonai Haomer Elai Shuv Le'artzecha Ulemoladtecha Ve'etiva Imak Katonti Mekol HaChasadim Umekol HaEmet Asher Asita et Avdecha Ki Ve'makli Avarti et HaYarden Hazeh Ve'ata Haiti Lishnei Machanot Hatzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav Ki yar'e anochi oto pen yavo vehikani em al panim ve'ata amarta hetiv etiv imak vesamti et zar'acha kechol hayam asher lo yisafer merov. Okay, this is good stuff. We're going to go back through bit by bit. So, Vayomer, that just says, and Vayomer Yaakov, and Jacob said. So, Vayomer Yaakov opens up the prayer. Elohei Avi Avraham. Elohei Avi Avraham. That's, O God of my father Abraham. God of my father Abraham. Velohei Avi Yitzchak. And God of my father Isaac. I love how Jacob calls Abraham his father and Isaac his father. The same. He uses the same term for both. He doesn't say Abraham, my grandfather. Elohei Avi Avraham. And you can see Elohei Avi, and then we see it repeated here with the Vav. Velohei Avi Yitzhak. Adonai. So here he Adonai, he refers to the name of God. HaOmer, who says Eli, to me. HaOmer Eli, the one who says to me. Shuv, return. Remember, he's returning, but he hasn't. He's near the river, the Jabbok River. He hasn't crossed the Jordan River yet. He's still east of the Jordan River, and he's coming, and he's going to cross back over. And so this returning is coming back from northeast, Padan Aram, coming down, and he's getting ready to cross over the Jordan that he had already crossed over when he left. And he says, Adonai, the God who says to me, Shuv, that's return. That's an imperative form from the root, Shin Vav Bet. Return to your land, La'artzecha, to your Eretz. Ul Moladtecha. That's to, this could be taken as your birthplace, or the place, the translation here is your relatives. But it's from the root Vav Lamed Dalet, where we get Yaled and Lecholid, to give birth, etc. You said, return to your land and to your relatives, your place of your birth. Ve'etiva imak, and I will do good to you. I will do good. Etiva, you see the root here is from the same root of the word tov, tet, tet and bet, you see, with a middle weak. It's got a yod in the middle. Etiva, I will do well. I will cause good to be with you. So this is God's goodness, and it's future-oriented, right? Jacob is being obedient to what God has told him to do, and it's future-oriented. And even though he's got a lot of, where he's coming from, he's got a lot of trouble. 20 years of hard labor, just unjust treatment from Laban, trickery, all these things he endured. He's not dwelling on that. He's looking forward. Well, in this case, he is feeling fearful, as we'll see, but he's rehearsing God's promise. I will do well for you. You see how the NASB says, I will make you prosper. And then verse 11 has an amazing phrase here, unique in all the Bible. It says, Katonti mikol hachasadim umikol ha'emet asher asita et avdecha. This is katonti plus a preposition min, right? Katonti min kol. Literally, now you see the NASB says, I am unworthy of all. But katon just means to be small. Katonti. And then when we have the relative, the preposition min, it's like a relative smallness. It's I am smaller than, or a comparative rather. So a real strange sounding English translation, but would reflect the Hebrew is, I am smaller, bear with me here, I'm smaller than all the chasadim. That's the plural of chesed. All the loving kindnesses, plural. And I'm smaller than all the loving kindnesses, and smaller than all the truth that you have done, or that you have dealt with your servant, that you have done for your servant, or that you have shown your servant. Even though asita is you have done, I like the translation shown. And so my takeaway, what does it mean if I am smaller? It sounds strange, doesn't it? I am smaller than all the loving kindnesses and then all the truth which you have shown your servant. Well, he's affirming that I am your Eved. He's affirming, he's crying out he says, the God of Avi Avraham, right? The Elohe Avi Avraham, Velohe Avi Yitzhak, Adonai HaOmer Elai, etc., etc. But then he says, I am your Eved, Avdecha. I am your Eved. I am your slave. I'm your slave. I'm your servant. And I am smaller than all the loving kindnesses and smaller than all the truth that you have shown me. For me, what does that mean to say I am smaller than? I think the NASB says I am unworthy. That's a fair translation. I am inadequate for, I don't deserve. It could also be, I am humbled by. I am thoroughly humbled by. We have places where we have the adjective katon plus the comparative mem, smaller than, to be smaller than. But here, uniquely, we have a verbal form in a perfect katonti mikol. I am smaller than. So I think it could mean all these things together. It's an extreme humility. It is a statement of unworthiness and gratitude. It's a statement of gratitude. But there's some fear and trembling here, as we're going to see. Ki ve makli avarti et hayarden hazeh. For with my staff, ve makli. So this hirik yod is my. With my staff avarti, I crossed over. What did he cross over? Et hayarden hazeh. This Jordan. He's talking about the River Jordan, but he says, he doesn't just say, I avarti et hayarden, but with only my staff I crossed over this Jordan, the Jordan. It's hayarden hazeh, this Jordan. It's a meaningful place. He knows that on the other side of this very river, that this is the promised land. This is where his father Isaac still lives. This is where his brother Jacob swore that he would kill him. And he's hesitant to return, but he's being obedient. He says, I am your servant, and you said to return, so I'm returning. But he doesn't feel adequate. He doesn't feel equipped. He says, I left with just this staff. And then he says, Ve'ata, and now, or but now, Haiti lishne machanot. I have become, often in Hebrew, the verb haya, lihyot, le, with the lamed preposition is to become. Haiti le means I have become. You'd say I was too, but that doesn't. It's Haiti li shnei machanot. I have become two camps. So he's contrasting. I left with nothing but my staff, and now I have become these two camps. And he's talking about the women and the children, all the flocks and everything that his whole group with him. And then he continues in his prayer. Hatzileni na. Hatzileni na. That means deliver me now. Deliver me, please. I like the NSB. Save me, please. Hatzileni na. Now, this is not different than where we say Hosanna. Hoshi'ana in Hebrew. In Aramaic, it's more Hoshana. Hoshi'ana means save now. Save, please. Hatzileni, save me, please. Miyad achi, from the hand of my brother. Miyad Esav, from the hand of Esau. Ki yar'e anochi oto. This is wonderful that he says this. Ki yar'e anochi oto. Yar'e is a participle here, because I am afraid of him, or because I fear him. So the two verbs that Jacob uses to describe himself, the two main I messages are in this prayer. Katonti, I am too small. I am unworthy. I am undeserving. I am completely humbled by. I am totally dependent upon and grateful for all the loving kindnesses and all the truth which you have shown your servant. So it's katonti, and here, yar'e anochi, I am afraid. Now, is this news to God? No, Yeshua tells us God knows what you need before you ask. Our prayer is not to inform God of anything. That's not the purpose of prayer. The purpose of prayer is the transformation of the worshiper towards God's will, in obedience to, in subjectivity to the will of God, the law of God. And this is a confession. Ki yare anochi oto. He's speaking the truth because God already knows. So Jacob is not hiding that he's afraid. He says, I fear him. He's being real. And how often when you're afraid do you know that you're afraid and you're able to say, I'm afraid right now. I'm a bit fearful. Even if you know, I need to trust God. There's no reason to be afraid. But before that, to just say, I'm feeling legitimate fear right now. Well, Jacob was able to do that before the Lord. And again, it's not informing God. It's Jacob being what we call, emotionally intelligent. He knows, he understands what he's feeling. And he's being vocal about it. Jacob has a real walk with the Creator. And he already says, I am completely unworthy and completely grateful for and undeserving of all the loving kindnesses and truth that you have shown me. If Jacob begins the prayer with such words, of course he is going to be real and open with God. God knows all things, but he still says it. This is it, Lord. This is my situation. Ki yare anochi oto, pen yavo vehikani, lest he come. So what's he afraid of? That he's envisioning a future. He doesn't know this is the true future, but this sentence here is not indicative, what we would call. It's not an indicative phrase. It's a possible, it's a scenario that could come true. All right, it could be it's a plausible outcome. Why? Because on the data that Jacob's working with, Esau said he was going to kill him. So there's that. Pen yavo vehikani im al panim, lest he come. That is Esau. This is what he's imagining, that Esau coming and striking or smiting him and mother and children. Aim al panim. A mother, even though it's aim here is singular, it means mothers. Mothers and the children. Mothers with the children. He is imagining a scenario where Esau comes and acts out in reality what he had uttered 20 years prior, that he would kill Jacob. Jacob took Esau seriously. He didn't take those words lightly at all, and they were resonated behind it in the back of all his experience for 20 years. Every time he thought about his brother, I would imagine daily, I would imagine more than once a day, many, many days, over 20 years, Jacob thought about Esau. And he had this fear that someday is Esau going to show up. And he's just being real and saying, Lord, here's my situation. I'm afraid of the situation. I'm being obedient to what you are asking, and I'm still fearful. But then he doesn't stop there. Jacob doesn't leave it there. He goes back to the promise. Ve'ata, but you, Amarta, you said, Hetev etivimak. It says, I will assuredly prosper you. But doing well, I will do well unto you. Being good, I will most assuredly be good to you. I will most assuredly do goodness for you. However, there's different ways we can translate this. But again, it's that word tov, good, is at the root. Hetev at etiv imak. Doing good, I will surely do well towards you. This is God's words that Jacob is reiterating in his memory back to God. Again, does God need to hear this to learn? No. This is Jacob's heart rehearsing truths of God's own words that he has stored up inside. Isn't that awesome? V'samti et zaracha kechol hayam asher lo yisafer merov. And I will set your seed, or I will make your seed. I will set your seed kechol hayam. Ke is like, hol is sand, hayam. Yam is the sea. Like the sand of the sea. Kechol hayam. Asher lo yisafer merov, which is not able to be counted because of its greatness. It's too much to be counted. That's how we would say this comparative. Asher lo yisafer merov. So there's a kind of, you could view this kind of like a sandwich in a way, in that he starts off, Vayomer Yaakov, and he cries out, or Jacob says, Elohei avi Avraham, ve'Elohei avi Yitzchak, Adonai ha'omer elai, shuv le'artzecha, u'lemoladtecha, ve'etiva imak. So he cries out to him, saying, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, the one who says to me, return to your country and to your relatives, and I will make you prosper. Right? So again, rehearsing what God has said. Katonti mikol, right? I am unworthy. I am totally dependent on and inadequate for all the favor, all the loving kindnesses, and the truth which you have shown to your servant. With only this, my staff, I crossed this Jordan, but now have become two companies. So again, worship of God, a rehearsal in Jacob's heart and now in his utterance of God's promise, a recognition of God's grace, that we stand in grace. Jacob isn't beating his breast in a way of like, oh, look how great I am. He's more like the beating his breast who says, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner, in the parable of the story of the publican and the Pharisee going to the temple. Complete humility before the king. He says, I am your servant. I am your Eved. But then he understands his inner turmoil in terms of God's covenant promise and the surety of God's promise and the history of the covenant. Abraham, Isaac, and he sees himself now in line of this covenant promise, that he knows God was faithful to Abraham, he knows God was faithful to Isaac, and he knows that God will be faithful to him. But still he asks the imperative, Hatzilenina, deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. Does God need to be told this? Does God need to be told to deliver Jacob? He's already promised. Why does Jacob need to say this? Because he's human. He has these emotions. Fear is a real thing, but he's taking it to the Lord. Cast your cares on him, for he cares for you. It's not cast your cares on him because God wants to learn about what your problems are. God already knows what he's doing. And he already knows what his promises are. He doesn't need to be reminded. We need to be reminded. We need to be transformed in our prayer life. Ki yare anochi oto, because I am afraid of him. I fear him, lest he will come and he will smite me, mothers, and the children. But he knows that he doesn't stop there. He says, that's my fear. That comes from my heart, my fallen heart. That's the thoughts and feelings coming out of my heart. But guess what? Jacob's not ruled by the thoughts of his heart. He's bringing these thoughts captive to the Lord. What does that mean? It means he's being real about what he's feeling, but he's not acting on it without taking it to the Lord and rehearsing what he knows to be true. And then right? Ve'ata. And I like, it says, for you said, I would say, but you said. So in spite of my fear, in spite of this horrible worst case scenario that he's imagining, Esau coming and wiping him away with the mothers and the children. That's a worst case scenario. And even though he has a fear based on that story, that it's not a real story, it's an imagined story, but it has a real emotional element. But you know where it says, but God, right? But God. But you said, you will most assuredly bless me with good. You do good to me. And you, v'samti et zarcha, and you said, I will set your seed. I will make your seed like the sand of the sea, which is too great to be counted. So he knows he has a future. He knows he lives. He knows he survives. He knows that Esau cannot wipe him off the planet. He's unable to, because God has already made such wonderful promises to Jacob. This doesn't mean Jacob's life's going to be easy. We know the whole story, if you've read it before. From here through the end of the book of Genesis, we learn of Jacob, and he had many, many troubles, but he worshiped the God of Israel, and he is Israel, right? His name is changed to Israel in this very Torah portion. He worshiped the God of his fathers, Abraham and Isaac. And this is a beautiful prayer from Genesis 32, 10 through 13. I hope just going through this has been a blessing for you, and that you enjoy some good Shabbat rest and time in fellowship with others and in meditation on the Word of God. All right, until next week, shalom.